It's like renting. It will pay if you die early. But term will not pay when you die. You gotta understand that. Like if you live to be 70 or 80 or 90, it's not gonna pay because you're gonna have to cancel it before you die. Because term is cheap in the short term, it's very expensive in the long term. It literally goes up every single year, and even if it doesn't, if it's a 20-year level premium, inside of there's a formula where, term does go up. So it will only pay if you die early. Permanent, that would be your whole life, your universal life, those types of policies. It's longer term. It's like owning a house, all right? And it will pay when you die. If it's in force, you die, it will pay. So that's kind of the basics, term and permanent. Now within term, there's different types. There's annual renewable. Now I don't think State Farm has annual renewable, but many companies do. That's where the premium literally goes up every single year. So like when you're 20, it might be, for a $100,000 term, it might be $8 or $9 a month, and then it goes up every single year. That's annual renewable term. Then there's 5-year, 10-year, 20-year term. That's probably the most popular type of term right now, but I'll tell you, many studies have shown that most people would actually be better with annual renewable, because the way that, let's say, a 20-year term works, the way 20-year term works is they keep the premium level for 20 years. But what does that mean? That means you're overpaying for about the first 10 years, so you can underpay for the second 10 years. That's how they level it. And so the first year of a 20-year term policy is going to be quite a bit more expensive than an annual renewable term. But then the annual renewable term goes up every single year, whereas the 20-year term stays the same, but just by definition, you're overpaying in the early years, so you can underpay in the later years. Is that clear? And so what many studies have shown is that most people would be better with annual renewable, because even though they buy a 20-year term, they don't keep it for 20 years. They keep it for 10 years and they cancel it. Well, what did they do? If they bought a 20-year term and only kept it for 10 years, what do? They overpaid for 10 years and they didn't get the underpayment for the next 10 years. So just understand that. And then there's something called return of premium term. I kind of like that one. It's kind of a good gimmick. And all that means is if you pay your premiums, let's say you have them for 20 years, if you die, it's going to pay a death claim. But if you don't die, you get all your money back. That's a pretty neat deal. But understand inside there what they're doing again. They're overcharging for term, so you're paying a little more than what you pay for term, and then they're putting that into some type of investment account to build up so that when you're done with the term, you can get all your money back. But what I'm saying is the gimmick of that it's kind of interesting, because I think for most people, that's an easy term policy to sell. I could sell it all day long. Hey, if you die, it's going to pay. If you don't die, you get all your money back. Pretty neat deal. So which of those term policies is better? Whichever one the client wants to buy. I'm not there to tell them they should only buy that policy or that policy or that policy. I want to show them what the options are, and then whichever one they like best, that's fine with me, okay? Permanent, there are basically two types of permanent. There's universal life and there's whole life. They're very different policies. A universal life is really a buy term and invest the difference policy. So when people say, I want to buy term and invest the difference, that's really what a universal life policy is. Now the investment side can be different. It can be a fixed interest. That's the way State Farm's is. You just earn an interest. That's all it is. There's a variable. That's where it's like a bunch of mutual funds inside the policy, and you can have money in an S&P 500 or an international fund. You can move the funds around. That's what a variable life is. Then there's fixed indexed. State Farm doesn't have that, but they're out there, where it's really an interest rate, but the interest rate is calculated on a formula to the S&P 500 index or one of the other index, NASDAQ 100 or whatever. You don't have that, but just understand, those are the types of investment when you buy term and invest the difference, okay? I'm going to talk about this later, but the big difference between universal life and buy term and invest the difference is if you buy term on your own, all that money's gone. Any money that you spend on term, that money's gone, you'll never get any of it back. If you buy it inside of a universal life policy, which is a buy term and invest the difference all in one umbrella, all the money that you spend on term insurance counts towards the cost basis of that policy. So if you ever sell a policy or cancel a policy, you get credit for all the money you spend on term, whereas if you buy term and invest the difference, you don't. So you're actually getting tax advantage term life insurance inside of a universal life policy. Now that's a little more complicated, but just understand that's all universal life it is buy term and invest the difference, but you get some tax breaks if you do it all together. The good thing about universal life is it's very flexible. So this is the type of policy you want to sell with your more flaky people. If they're kind of flaky and they kind of come and go and change their mind a lot, you do not want to sell them a whole life policy, because a whole life policy is less flexible. You kind of have to stick with the plan. So your flakers, you want to use universal life, because I will tell you a true story. This true story, and I remember this because I was a brand new agent in Arizona. And if you've ever been to Phoenix, Arizona, all the houses have red roofs. They all have red roofs, red tile roofs, except for one subdivision in Chandler. It's got blue tile roofs. Blue. That's how I remember this. So I pull in there and go, okay, they got blue roofs here. And I wrote at the time $250,000 universal life on the husband and $250,000 universal life on the wife, variable life on universal life. Now, $250,000 doesn't sound like much, but this was like 30 years ago. This was like if you sold $1 million policy today, that is a big deal, okay? And I wrote so it was kind of a big deal. I wrote it, no problem with it. 3 years later, I get a call from this guy, and he says, hey, we're getting a divorce. I want to cancel all my policies. And I said, well, look, I've been through this a few times. We found it's best not to cancel your policies when you're going through a divorce. Let's see how it all settles out, because things can change, and let's not just cancel. You have a policy where I can stop the premium. So I can just stop the premium on universal life. There's enough money in that policy, it'll keep going for a while, so let me just stop the premiums. He said, I don't care, I just don't want to pay anymore. We're not getting back together, this is it. I just don't want to pay anymore. I said, okay, so I stopped the premiums. 6 months later, I'm reading the Sunday paper, and I read that this guy shot his wife 3 times and then killed himself. Now, she's alive, barely, in the hospital. So it's a Sunday, I go into my office, because one of the things I did was I always asked for parents' names and numbers, and I did that for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was for emergencies like this, but then I could also do it for referrals in the future. But I tried to get brothers, sisters, neighbors, parents, I tried to get contacts. So I went, and I had her parents' number in my file. I call them up, talk to her dad. I said, hey, this is Tom Hegna, I'm the agent involved. I just saw what happened, it's terrible. I don't know when the right time is. I just want you to know I'm the one who can handle the death claims on the life insurance policies on her ex. And then he got mad at me. What kind of joke is this? He canceled those policies 6 months ago. I said, no. He wanted to cancel the policies. We didn't cancel. We just stopped the premium. They're not canceled. There was money in those policies. They kept them going. They could probably keep going for 5 or 10 years. That policy is in force. And I delivered a $250,000 death claim to her hospital bed. And again, you got to go back 30 years when interest rates were 12 and 13%. 250,000 could set her up for a long time, and she was able to start a business, and she was able to take care of her kids for the rest of her life based on that policy. Now, if that had been a whole life policy, I could have never done that, because if he stopped paying that for 2 or 3 months, boom, it's going to lapse, right? Because there's some non-forfeiture stuff, but whole life does not last very long if you're not paying a premium. Whereas universal life, that could go for 10 or 12 years without you paying a premium if there's enough cash in there. And so, it must be funded properly. The problem with universal life is that you got a lot of policies out there. Because it's so flexible, people have run into financial problems. They lowered their premiums. Well, if you lower your premiums for a long period of time, those policies are going to blow up, because what's happening inside the policy is those term premiums are going up every single year. And if you don't have enough cash to cover those term premiums, it will eventually blow up, and those can be bad because it's a taxable event going back to when you bought it. So universal life, it's very flexible. That's a good thing. The bad thing, it's very flexible. People can lower the premiums, and so you've got to fund it properly. If you fund it properly, it will be fine. But if you underfund those policies, you're going to have problems. Now, whole life, everything's guaranteed. The premium's guaranteed, the death benefit's guaranteed, there's guaranteed cash value. It does pay dividends. Dividends are not guaranteed, but they've been paid like every year that State Farm's been in existence. So they're not guaranteed, but they're pretty reliable. Okay, let me put it that way. It's less flexible. You have to pay your premiums, all right? But I really, from my observation, being in the business 30 years, seeing all the different policies, I think a good whole life policy is as good a policy as there is out there. And if you're young and healthy, you ought to buy the biggest whole life policy you can afford. In fact, stretch yourself a little, because if I could go back to when I was 25, I would buy a lot more permanent life insurance. I would buy a lot more whole life insurance. It's like a freight train. That's another way to explain it. If you've ever watched a freight train, it takes a while to get going. It goes choo, choo, But then when it's going, you can't stop a freight train. Like if a car pulls in front of a freight train, it can't stop, it's gonna go right through the car. It's the same with a whole life policy. It takes a while for those dividends to get paid, but once those dividends are coming in, you can't stop them, and every year they keep going up and up and up, and it's one of the best things that you'll ever done in your entire life is get a nice big whole life policy. That is one of the best things you can do. So, any questions on universal life, whole life, differences, term? Any questions on that? Yes. Cool.
So just a couple of things that you said. So when you were mentioning you get the emergency contact information for the, do you then, thanks Sam. So then do you then later say, hey, by the way, would it be okay for me to reach out to the contacts that I got for, see if I can help them too, or?
I prefer to have them call the contacts and refer them to me. I prefer that, but I did like to get, one of the things I was taught is when you're doing a fact finder, do a family tree. Tell me about your parents. Are they still alive? Where are they? What do they do? And you ask about the parents. Then tell me about, do you have any brothers and sisters? Are they local? What do they do? Blah, blah, blah. Tell me about your children. What do they do? So that's a great way to talk to people, is just think of the family tree and try to build that. And so I literally had a little family tree in each of my files, and I would put their parents' names, their brothers, sisters, their children, and if I could get a phone number or a contact just for emergency, I'd try to do that. And so not necessarily that I was going to call her parents, but that I had that information in the file, and if I needed to, I could. Yes.
Right. I like that idea of the family tree.
Yeah.
So do you like that? So how do you set that up with them?
Well, you can literally get a little printout of a family tree and just, just think about it. Your mom and dad, there's your brothers and sisters, there's your kids. And if you wanted to go to nephews and nieces, but I never went that far. But I wanted to know parents, brothers and sisters, and children. I wanted to know their basic family tree. Where are they from? Are their parents alive? Are they dead? Are they local? Are they married? Are they divorced? I wanted to know that just because then I could get a better feel for the entire case.
And then how did you kind of set that up, like go from there to asking for the referral? Like, did you have
I didn't always ask for the referral right away, but in my file, then when I do a 6-month review or a 12-month review, after I've been there for a while, then I feel like I've earned the chance to ask for the referral. I don't necessarily do it on the first appointment because they don't know me from a hole in the ground, and they don't know if they're gonna, but once we got a relationship, then I can say, I go in the file and say, now, has anybody talked to your parents about long-term care, or are your parents concerned about running out of money? And I could ask questions like that. Or does your brother, and you can even sometimes check these people on LinkedIn or Facebook, and you find out, oh, this person just got a divorce, this person just got married, this person just had a kid. I think if we would use social media a lot better at watching and listening. See, the people who buy life insurance, there's a much higher percentage that they'll buy if they just had a life event. So if they just had a baby, they just got married, they just lost a parent, they just got engaged. Those are all events in their life that will cause them to think differently. So if we could just be watching our social media a little closer, and somebody's getting engaged, or they're getting married, or they just had a baby, that would be somebody I'd want to reach out to right away. Hey, congratulations, I just saw on Facebook you had a baby. Just get them a baby gift or something, and then say, hey, now we got to start thinking about college education. You want to make sure you protect their insurability. There's a whole bunch of things that we got to do from an insurance standpoint when you have a baby. And just those life events are when they're more likely to buy life insurance. Just understand that.
And then just one last question,
Yeah.
sorry. You said something about that I really liked about the buy term and invest the difference thing, like a universal life is basically that. But then you said something about the fact that if they just actually bought term and invested the difference, they wouldn't get
it.
some sort of tax advantage.
All right,
or
so
wasn't
I'm
clear
going to
on
draw over here. I want to do it at the next break because I want to make sure I got all my numbers right. But I have an example that I'll break that out.
Awesome.
I just didn't normally do it at this point, but I'll do it at the break. And I just
Okay.
want to make sure I got all my numbers because my mind is still a little fuzzy from this week. I've been going like crazy. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right. Any other questions on term, variable? All right. So now let me ask you a question. What is the value of a human life? I get people who get mad at that. How can you say that? That you can't put a value on a human life? Let me tell you what, State Farm and attorneys and judges have to put a value on a human life every single day. When somebody plows through, the intersection and kills 2 of your customers, I promise you somebody's going to figure out what their human life value is. So let me give you a couple tools that you can use to have a conversation about people with their human life value. If you go back to 9/11, think about 9/11. When those towers came down, there were all kinds of people in there. There were senior vice presidents, there were CEOs, there were waitresses, there were waiters, there were policemen, there were firemen, there were bus boys. How do you determine the human life value of a bus boy versus a CEO? Or a waitress versus a senior vice president? How do you determine their human life value? Well, that's what they had to do. And so if you can Google the human life value of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. Here's how they determine people's human life value. They looked at three things. They looked at your age, they looked at your income, and they looked at how many children you have. Now, why would children fit into human life value? Well, if you've got 5 kids, you've got a lot of responsibility. You've got a lot of obligations, financial obligations. And so what you will find here is that a busboy who is 35 has a higher human life value than a CEO who's single, who's 65. How could that be? Well, because if you're young with children, you have a much longer time span for financial obligations. So what this should tell you is that the people in your book of business who need the highest amounts of life insurance are your young couples with kids. If you've got a 30-year-old with 3 kids and they got $100,000 of life insurance, are you kidding me? They need $3 or $4 million worth of life insurance. So your human life value, of course, the more money you make, the higher your human life value. The younger you are, the higher your human life value because you have more years of earning and investing. And then the more children you have, the higher your human life value. So again, I want you to remember, when you're sitting down in front of that young person with 2 or 3 kids or 4 kids or 5 kids, they're the ones that need the most life insurance. They have the most financial obligations. They're the ones whose families will be devastated if you don't put millions of dollars of life insurance in force. And we're going to talk about this when we talk about larger cases in a little while. Now, a simple way to do it is if you go to lifehappens.org, lifehappens.org, they have a human life value calculator. It is free. You just plug in some information, what's their income, what's their tax rate, how much life insurance they already have, what other savings do they have. You click a button, boom, and it tells them what their human life value is. I will tell you, this is actually lower than probably what it should be, but it's probably more realistic, because if you go sit down with some 30-year-old person with 3 kids and tell them their human life value is $3.5 million, what are they going to say? Get out of town. You're like, they're not even going to talk to you, right? So it's got to be reasonable, but I'm telling you, your people are so far underinsured, they have no idea. They have no idea how far underinsured they are, and we'll cover that early this afternoon.
I loved it though when some of you were saying, I don't know how to even start the conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Is to say, do you know what your human life value is? I mean, what a great question.
That's a great
to ask
question.
them, right?
Yeah, and when we get into this afternoon, I'm going to talk a little bit more about human capital. So now, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, I've spoken numerous times to State Farm all over the country. I was compliance approved, and I was kind of known as the annuity guy inside of State Farm because a lot of what I do talks about annuities. And then when the DOL thing hit and State Farm went, and they pulled away their mutual funds and they took the annuities out of travel and took annuities out of management comp, which I didn't agree with at all, by the way, but anyway, they did it. Then all of a sudden, I wasn't as popular a speaker because, annuities were less attractive. Well, I will tell you this, I can promise you annuities are gonna come back. They have to, because math and science says so. So what I wanted to do is just, for those of you who've never seen, I'm just gonna go through and show you where life insurance fits in the retirement equation, because I'm not just an annuity guy. I'm a life person too, and I'm a long-term care person too, but they all fit together. So what I'm gonna do is just spend about 20 minutes kind of going over some of the things that I would go over in a normal presentation and then show you where life insurance fits. I'm not gonna give you my whole hour, don't worry, retire happy. I'm gonna spend about 15 minutes, but I wanted to kind of take you through that. So
Go to page 5 in your work.
yeah, this is the TV special, and so let me, for those of you who don't know, I have written 4 books on retirement, and my first book is a book by the name of Paychecks and Playchecks. And I will tell you, I'm a reluctant author. I never want to write a book. I didn't dream writing a book. It wasn't on my bucket list, so why to write a book? Well, here's why. Because right now, if your customers talk to 50 different financial advisors and ask this very simple question, how should I retire? You know what they're going to get? They're going to get 50 different opinions of what they ought to do. Well, isn't that interesting? See, retirement's been studied in depth by PhDs all over the world. People like Dr. David Babel of Wharton, Dr. Moshe Milevsky of Toronto, Dr. Menachem Yari of Israel, most recently Dr. Robert C. Merton, a Nobel Prize winner who just published in the Harvard Business Review. Well, guess what? I've read their research. And you know what their research says? There are not 50 optimal ways to retire. There's really one optimal way to retire, and that's not my opinion. It's based on mathematical, scientific, and economic facts. So when I go around the country talking about paychecks and playchecks, what I'm doing is I'm sharing the math and science behind a successful retirement. There is a mathematical and scientific optimal way to retire, and that's what I talk about in Paychecks and Playchecks. This book is powerful in life insurance, annuities, and long-term care. It goes deep into life insurance, annuities, and long-term care. Well, if I had to summarize Paychecks and Playchecks, I'd summarize it this way. What day of the week do you spend the most money? What day of the week you go golfing, you go to Home Depot, get your nails done, get your hair done? What day of the week would that be? Saturday. Well, guess what? The day you retire, every day is Saturday. See, you're not just going to need paychecks. I would argue you're going to need to have some playchecks so you can actually enjoy your retirement. So I talk a lot about why people are not enjoying their retirements, and you have a lot of customers in your book of business that are not happy and they're not enjoying their retirements. And I share with people why that's happening and what they can do differently to make sure that they enjoy their retirement. Well, I gave the Paychecks and Playchecks talk down in San Diego about 4 years ago at a big industry meeting, and there was somebody there from PBS, Public Television. And they said, Tom, we need to take this message out to the American people because they're getting the wrong message from all these other talking heads. But we're not sure they really understand this paycheck and playcheck thing. We would need a simpler title. So I wrote another book. It's called Don't Worry, Retire Happy, because I think everybody can understand that. And by the way, State Farm sponsored this TV event, the PBS TV event. And for those of you who know, the DVD of the presentation is compliance approved for you to use with customers. Now think about that. When was the last time you had something like this that played on PBS that you could actually use with customers? So it's compliance approved to use with customers. But so here are the 7 simple steps that I shared with the American people. This is what I was going around doing, these seminars, customer seminars for State Farm. And by the way, I'm still approved to do customer seminars at State Farm. I'm doing some out in Florida coming up. I've shifted a little more towards life insurance, away from the annuities, but I'm telling you, they still need annuities. So don't write annuities off. I know you're not getting travel comp, I know that, but they still need that guaranteed income. But here are the 7 simple steps I've shared with the American people. Number 1, they gotta have a plan. Not only do they need to have a plan, they need to work with a financial professional. Retirement is not a do-it-yourself project. Number 2, we need to teach them how to maximize their Social Security benefits. Do you realize for most of your customers, Social Security is the largest retirement asset they have? And yet people spend more time planning their summer vacation than learning how to maximize those valuable benefits. Step number 3, we should encourage them to consider a hybrid retirement. Too many people are trying to retire too early. They haven't saved enough money. And if we can get them to work a couple extra years, even part-time, we can increase their success in retirement significantly. Step number 4, they've got to have a plan to protect themselves against inflation. So not only do you need to give them income to age 100 and beyond, what you really need to give them is increasing income to age 100 and beyond. So look, this is where stocks can fit, this is where mutual funds can fit, this is where real estate can fit. They can build a portfolio that if we get inflation, the portfolio goes up. But I want you to know they can also protect themselves against inflation without using any risk products. You need to know, I've already bought guaranteed lifetime income that will kick in when I turn age 60. But I bought even more that kicks in when I turn age 65. I bought even more that kicks in when I turn age 70. I bought even more that kicks in when I turn age 75. I got 11 of them. And I'll probably have 30 of them before I shut this thing down, because I've learned this about retirement. Retirement is not about the stock market. Retirement is not about the bond market. Retirement is not about real estate. And retirement is not about Bitcoin. A successful retirement has 2 very simple components. Component number 1 is increasing income for the rest of your life, and component number 2 is risk management. That is really what a successful retirement is all about. Step number 5, they need to secure more guaranteed lifetime income. This is why annuities will have to come back. into your comp plans because they have to do it. This isn't my opinion. This is a mathematical, scientific, and economic fact. They need to have guaranteed lifetime income in their portfolio. Step number 6, they must have a plan for long-term care. No retirement plan is complete without a plan for long-term care. And I know State Farm doesn't do long-term care, but you do have a rider on your universal life policy, and that has to be the plan now. Step number 7, I teach them how to use their home equity wisely because their house is one of the largest assets they have. And then I wrap up with the most efficient way to pass wealth to your children, grandchildren, and charities, which is with life insurance. I tell people all the time, don't leave your kids any money. Spend all of your money. I don't want you to leave your kids a nickel. I want you to leave them life insurance because you can do that for pennies on the dollar. So that's what I talk about. So let me share with you where life insurance fits in this retirement conversation, because a lot of people say, oh, I can't talk to old people about life insurance. Well, people over the age of 60 buy more life insurance than people under the age of 60. So remember that. But here's some specific ways you can help your retired customers with life insurance. Yes?
Repeat that again, because a lot of people say they get to a 60-year-old, they're intimidated by talking to them.
People over the age of 60 buy more life insurance than people under the age of 60. You know, when we get into handling objections, I'm going to handle one, and you know, I won't need life insurance when I'm older. That's what Dave Ramsey says. Oh, when you're older, you're going to be rich. You won't need life insurance anymore. Well, that's the most false statement ever, because who buys the biggest policies? Do you know who buys the biggest life insurance policies? Old rich people buy the biggest policies. So if you didn't need life insurance when you were older, why would old rich people buy any life insurance whatsoever? See, if that was true, they wouldn't. But they buy the biggest policies of all. So that is false. You want to have life insurance through your whole rest of your life, and I'm going to share with you why. So one of the things I do when I'm talking long-term care, see, a lot of people think retirement's going to be 30 or 40 years of golf, cruises, tennis, and line dancing. That's not true. You're going to go through 3 distinct phases. Let me show what your retirement's really going to look like. The first phase of your retirement is what I call the go-go years. Now, the go-go years, you're playing golf, you're playing tennis, you're going on cruises, you're line dancing every day. It's happy hour somewhere. That's the go-go years. But make no mistake about it, the go-go years are going to be followed by the slow-go years. Now, the slow-go years, you can still do everything in the go-go. You just don't want to anymore. In fact, you don't want to go downtown after 4:30 because Dad can't see when it's dark out. Yeah, that's the slow-go years. And the slow-go years are going to be followed by the no-go years. And the no-go years are those years when you're probably not leaving the building till you're leaving the building, if you know what I'm talking about. So we got go-go, slow-go, no-go. This is what I have learned watching my parents go through these phases. I have learned that the go-go years is all about income, not assets, income, which is why 100% of my investments are going into income in my go-go years, which I define as age 60 to 80. You pick your own, but watching my parents, age 60 to 80, I am literally buying as much income as I can buy. Now this income goes for the rest of my life. But I'll be honest, I'm not taking inflation protection on all of it. Some of it, but not all of it. You know why? Because I don't necessarily want to have a bunch of income when I'm 117. I want to have a bunch of income between 60 and 80. So the go-go years is all about income. Go ahead and ask the question.
What percentage do you put into the income? You said a certain percentage goes into that. What's that percentage?
No, I said for me it's 100%. But I mean, the average client would be 20 to 40% of their portfolio should go towards income. I've just studied this stuff so much. I know it's all about income. Retirement's all about income. It's not about assets. It's not about money. It's about income. If you've got enough income coming in, you can do anything you want in retirement. The slow-go years, that's all about long-term care. And here's what I say about long-term care. Any plan is better than no plan. So if they're not going to buy long-term care insurance, then by golly, you better sell them life insurance with a long-term care rider on it. Because if they don't have a plan, guess what? The government has a plan. And you know what the government plan is? You have to spend all of your money down until you become destitute. You then go on welfare. It's called Medicaid. If you don't know what Medicaid is, just look to your left, look to your right. Go ahead, look to your left, look to your right. That's Medicaid. What you're saying is you're not going to pay for yourself. You expect the person on the left and the person on the right to pay for you. Well, look at them. They can't even afford their own long-term care. How are they going to pay for yours? So that's why Medicaid is broke, because Medicaid can't cover everybody. And if you think that that's your plan, if somebody says, oh, the government will pay. Oh, really? Yeah, why don't you take a field trip and go to a Medicaid-approved facility and walk in there and take a big smell. You should make all of your customers do that and see if that's where they want to spend the rest of their life. That is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. And the no-go years, that's all about life insurance. And I have people say all the time, life insurance has nothing to do with retirement. No, life insurance has everything to do with retirement. Do you understand? It's the life insurance you bring into retirement that gives you the license to spend your money. You want to know why so many of your customers are not enjoying their retirements? Because in the back of their mind, they think they got to leave their kids some money. Oh, we got to leave some money, Johnny and Susie. We got to leave some money, Johnny and Susie. So they're denying themselves a retirement to leave money to their kids. What did I say about that? Don't do that. I don't want you to leave any money to your kids. I want you to spend every last nickel you got. I want you to leave them life insurance. So let me use me as an example. So we got 4 kids. So one day we're sitting around saying, hey, how much should we leave the kids? I don't know, what do you think? I said, well, if we bought a $1 million second to die life insurance policy, when we're both gone, they'll get $1 million tax free. That's $250,000 a piece. Let's start there. So we bought a $1 million second to die life insurance policy, named the 4 kids as beneficiary. That policy is completely paid up. Do you know what the total cost of that $1 million policy was? $150,000. So now think about this. For 15 cents on the dollar, we get to transfer $1 million tax free to our kids. Who gets to spend all the rest of the money? We do. See, teach your customers that they can spend their money if they would leave their kids life insurance, and show them that for this much they can leave their kids this much. Why? Why save this much money to give to your kids when you could do it with this much and have State Farm pay that much, and then you could take the rest of the money and spend it for yourself? So that is a key concept of helping people in retirement that can retire better if they leave life insurance to their kids instead of trying to leave their kids money. Now at this point, I do a lot of seminars, and I say at this side, I say, I was going to talk to you a little bit more about your kids, but the more of these seminars I do, I find so many people don't even like their kids anymore that I go straight to the grandchildren, because I know you still love them. And I'm going to tell you, don't leave your grandchildren any money either. And let me show you why. And by the way, this piece is compliance approved for you to use with customers. It's in the Tom Hagen approved stuff on ABS. Okay, so here's Annie. We met with Annie. She said, Tom, I got $100,000 down at the bank. It's not earning much. I don't care. I don't need this money. It's my just-in-case money. I named my 6 grandchildren as beneficiary, and when I die, they're each going to get a little over $16,000. Well, that's a nice grandma, and I bet you all have customers who have a situation like this. They want to do something for their grandchildren. But I say this, if that's her just-in-case money, why does she have it in the bank? Why didn't she put it into a State Farm life insurance policy? She can still get money out if she needs it, but when she dies, each grandchild gets $36,000 instead of $16,000. Don't leave your grandchildren money, leave them life insurance, because you can leave them more. What about charitable giving? Here's Al and Helen. They're very charitable. They're generous people. They tithe to their church. They give to their university. They saved up $50,000 they want to give to charity, but when they started talking about it, they each want to give $50,000. Well, how do you give $100,000 to charity if all you saved up was $50,000? You put the $50,000 in a State Farm life insurance policy, it immediately creates $100,000 in gifting power. You want to leave more money to charity? Don't leave them money, leave them life insurance, because you can leave them so much more. What about protecting Social Security benefits? Here the husband gets $2,000 a month, the wife gets $1,000 a month. What happens when he dies? Well, she gets his. What happens to hers? It's gone. So what happened? Her income just went down. What happened to her taxes? She was filing joint. Now she has to file single. So her income went down, her taxes went up. What could have protected her from this? Life insurance. And you know what's neat about State Farm? You have a first to die policy. Now we're going to talk about first to die, second to die. But what is a first to die policy? A first to die policy covers 2 people, husband and wife. Whoever dies first, the death benefit's paid. Wouldn't that be perfect for Social Security? You don't know who's going to die first. Most of the time, 70% of the time, the husband's going to go first. But 30% of the time, the wife's going to die first. So why don't you put a first to die policy in the husband and wife, and whoever dies first, there's money to replace the Social Security check. I'm just saying, you've got a lot of things you can talk to your seniors about that you may not be thinking about when they walk in. You say, oh, they're 70, they drink our coffee, there's nothing I can do. Talk to them about this. Talk to them about their grandchildren. Talk to them about charitable giving. Talk to them about replacing a Social Security benefit. Those are all simple ways you can communicate to your older people about life insurance. All right. Now, Ann, you got to show them that they can really do this 70 life apps in 70 days.
All right, what questions do you have for Tom?
Oh, any questions for me?
It's a lot.
All right.
Alrighty then. All right. Gotta like us on Facebook. We have a lot of pictures now that we took. You're on candid camera.
I do have a question.
Sure.
On the slide, you said there's a flag.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you go to ABS and type in Tom Hegna, all my compliance approved stuff will pop up there. That'll be in like the orange. There's the original Paycheck and Playcheck sales concepts. There's a bunch of them, and that life idea is one of them. And then there's also Retirement Alpha booklet that's compliance approved, and my DVD is compliance approved. And let me tell you, I used to have brown hair. I work with your compliance department, let me tell you what. But I got more stuff through State Farm compliance than I think anybody else outside of State Farm, so I work hard at it. But anyway, all right, Ann, turn it over.
All right, great. Now, want to make this campaign easy for you to think through. So we reduced everything to the ridiculous to make it a reality for all the agencies. Ellen is going to be sending you a blank of this, that if you want to use it in your offices to have a meeting, you can do that. All right, so first of all, I'm going to back up. How many people do you speak to every day in your office? Clients that call in. How many people, Stacy, would you say? 2 to 4 a day. 2 to 4 a day. How many people do you speak to? Who speaks to more than 2 to 4 a day? How many speaks to 10 to 15 a day? 18 to 25 a day. All right, your hands are still up. Okay, all righty. How many of those people that call in do you think are underinsured with life insurance? A lot, right? Probably over, you said earlier, Steve, over 80% of the people are going to be underinsured. So the beautiful thing is, even from inbound calls, you've got an opportunity to talk to them about life insurance. All right, we'll talk about how you approach them. All right, so the number of families you speak to in a day, I used one of my clients' numbers, one of the team members that also, they're in Aspirin, but it doesn't matter, they do some service and sales. They were saying they speak to 15 people a day. Now, out of those 15 people a day, now we lowballed this, but they said 65% of those 15 people a day would be good candidates for life insurance discussions. All right? So that means the total number of candidates for life insurance discussions per day for this team would be 10. Fair enough? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, now, and you're going to have to use your own numbers. Total number of candidates in a month for life insurance discussions only would be 210 people a month. Ruben, does that make sense? Cool? All right. Now, number 5, what percentage of the families could be quoted from those discussions? So you've had, let's say you talk to them about life insurance. We just lowballed it at 20% were to be quoted. That means in a month, you would be quoting 42 families life insurance a month with good, compelling conversations and quotes, not just slapping it onto the auto plan, but having a worthwhile and compelling discussion. Does that make sense? So really, Pumpkinheads, 40 to 42 families quoted a month. That's bottom line. Does that make sense? Steve, nothing less than that. Are you guys working on that? Are you? How many are you quoting, honey?
I'm supposed to be quoting one a day.
All right, okay, so you're gonna double that amount, right? Okay, there you go. But it really, on any kind of bonus plan that I have, we say at least 40 families quoted a month in life insurance. Now, number 7, all right? So you're really looking at a minimum of 2 per day. So out of those, I'm talking about, some of them are inbound calls. We're not even talking about outbound. We're not even talking about referrals calling in. We're not even talking about people that you're calling from ECRM and you're talking to them about their auto plan. We're just saying in general, inbound calls alone, you've got enough people to have at least 42 people quoted a month. Yes, ma'am.
Break that wall. Well, I'm not Jake or John Maria. So it's kind of hard to break those walls down when they've been called like multiple times in a quarter.
Are those new clients or?
No, they're existing customers, book of business, like they call the phone, look at their ABS notes, and they're like decline. So I don't know what took in the conversation, but it's hard to break those walls.
Okay, we'll talk about
Yeah,
that,
okay.
handling the objection
Yeah.
piece of it. But what you might wanna do is find some new blood.
Yeah, that's easier to do. You guys are easier.
Right.
It's just existing ones that you're trying to
Right, well, maybe there's a little different way that you can talk to them about it. And we'll see, at the end of the day, let's see if we answered your question. Fair enough? Okay, all right, so 2 a day. Is that impossible, guys? 2 a day. Find two families a day. Now, the minimum number of families quoted, this is per person, in the campaign would be 140 families. Right? Alyssa, does that make sense?
It does.
Now, the number of policies quoted per family. All right, this is, let's say, Stephen, how many policies did you write in 2017 in life insurance? Do you remember?
How many would write or place?
All right, so let's say you placed 100. Let's say you placed 100. All right, out of those 100, it's not 100 families. It could be 70 families that went with those 100 policies. Does that make sense? So the average is about 1.45 policies written per family. It might be a little more, now that you're getting into 2018 after your fast start, but this is what they said the agencies were saying last year. About 1.45 policies were written per family. Fair enough? So if that was the case in 2017, then you would quote actually 203 policies during the 70 days. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. Number 11. Now, what's your closing ratio? Now, after today, and probably after last week in New Orleans, your closing ratio is going to go up quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we find the closing ratio to almost double after attending this session. But I'm even saying it's a 12% closing ratio. Forget, before you even go through this program. You with me? So I don't want to, blow it out of the park, but people are doubling 24, 25% closing ratio after the session. The total number of apps that you could write in 70 days individually with a closing ratio of 12% would be 24 apps. Personally. All right, Tammy? Personally. How many team members are, Tammy, in your office?
I have 2 sales, 2 service.
All right, and so there are 2 of you that are selling life insurance? Plus the
Basically
agent?
me, if the other one doesn't write much.
Okay, well, maybe you'll get her to write much. Okay, how about with Ruben, how many people in the office sell life insurance?
Me and Marie.
Okay, all right, so there are 2 of you. How about for you? We'll go over here to Mr. Estree's group. How many people sell life insurance in your agency? 3 people. Okay, how about your agency now? 4 people. Your agency?
4 including me.
Okay, 4 including you? 2 right now? All right, so if your closing ratio was double that amount, you'd be writing 48 each in 70 days. Does that make sense? But when you've got 3 or 4 team members that are selling life insurance, this is what's going to happen. And I use the number 3. The total agency could write 72 life apps in 70 days. Because each one of the team members at just a 12% closing ratio would be writing 24 apps. Does that make sense? Stacy, is that cool? So, is it realistic, guys? Is it realistic?
Scary.
What's going to be the linchpin? What is the linchpin? You got to quote the families. You've got to find a minimum of 40 families a month that you're going to quote. That's all you need to do. And I say that's all you need to do. I mean, if you've got 21 working days in a month, and I know May is a long month, I mean, you do 2 a day, you've got over 40, you got 44, 43, 42. Does that make sense? All right? What are you thinking, Steve?
Sounds good.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, can you go right back 1 more page? I was on
Soitley.
Thank you. There you go.
Now, these are not your numbers,
Right.
these are Trey Rose's numbers from Atlanta. This is
I
that,
wanna write it so I can get like the formula in my head here.
yeah, that's okay, and we'll get you some blanks if you want. I mean, Ellen will send you some blanks. Question, Natalie. Did you guys have questions?
She got me in class, was 8 or 3.
That was 3, honey, yeah, 3 people, right, yeah. Okay. But again, this is a 12% closing ratio. And I'm not defending it, I'm just saying. So how many feel now that 70 life apps in an agency for 70 days is practical? Raise your hand. Right. Not unrealistic. So the whole linchpin is 40 families quoted life minimum a month. Now, here are some of the things that you guys can do to make that happen. And this is not your, it's just, you'll have to add it to your sheet on page 6. You could do call outs. Right? We call it the rock room. Spend a certain an hour a day and make calls to people that have homes, that have families, that have things to lose if something were to happen to the breadwinner. Or not even the breadwinner. I mean, you've got someone who is a stay-at-home mom and her whole thing is taking care of the kids. Her probably income is, has more value income-wise than maybe the breadwinner thinks he or she does. Okay. Also, I would look at old quotes where life insurance was quoted and not written.
That's a good idea.
There was an agent in San Antonio during this session, Fast Start, that went to old quotes that her team members had talked to the customers about, and she needed probably 20 more life apps. She called these people back and she wrote over 30 herself. So you planted the seed, now go back, and Tom says this a lot, is I was in a class, I was in a workshop this week, and I had you on my mind. I was thinking about you the whole time. And you go back and you revisit that particular person or family that you quoted. S coverage, I think, is a really cool thing. How many of you sell S coverage? All right, it's a no-brainer, right? $2 or something every 6 months, something like that. I would go back, this is what I would go back to, Steve and group. I would go back to your people that have S coverage. I would just tell them, I just want to let you know you've got S coverage on your auto plan. A lot of people don't understand what it is, and explain what it means by death and dismemberment, right? But then you can kind of pivot over to, now that is from an auto accident. We don't see any notes in our system of what other life insurance program you have in place. And it's a great pivot over to a deeper life insurance conversation. So I love S coverage calls. Homeowners with no triangle protection, that has no protection on their home if something were to happen to the breadwinners or to the earners of the family. Get referrals from people that you're writing life insurance for. Their conversion list, I know that you guys use a lot. I know you've got the birthday list to say, hey, you're turning 102. We got to make sure we get you in, you got a deal right now. Grandparents, Tom was talking about this earlier, the gift of life. I don't know, but on Facebook, I don't know, something must have been in the water about 9 months ago. Because there are more people having babies. Have you seen that? It's like so cute. Okay, your top 100 clients. Now, I don't mean your top premium clients. Choose your top pets. Now, what Christy Lee said at one point is, go for your zip code 90210, right? Everybody has a 90210 zip code. Find some of those people, the people that have some money, go and speak to them about their life insurance, because more than likely they're not being entertained by a lot of life insurance people, unless it was someone like Tom Hagner who's selling life insurance. But they're not being romanced, all right? New drivers, start up the life insurance program. You get these added useful drivers. That should be a natural pivot to talk about. Now they're responsible, now let's talk to them about getting their life insurance program started. Right? New drivers, new auto quotes, we're going to talk about that later, how that sounds. And then utilizing the marketing opportunity tab. I know it's probably an ECRM now, but it's definitely an ABS where there's a drop down that says they have a high propensity for life insurance. You got to stop and look at that stuff when you take all these service calls and get away from being transactional. Does that make sense? Before you leave, you're going to, there's an exercise. Well, actually, you're gonna take it with you, is to come up with some of the prospects based on the conversations that we've had with you today, to go after those people. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got at least 20 people I need to be reaching back out to. All right, any questions? All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we take another little break, all right? And we're gonna get